Somewhere in Lagos or Kampala or Nairobi, a motorcycle is pulling away from a curb. There's a passenger on the back, a sack of rice bungeed across the tank, and well over 100,000 kilometers already on the clock. That bike isn't a Harley, and it isn't a shiny new Honda either. It's a Bajaj Boxer, an Indian motorcycle that most folks in America have never even heard of. Bajaj says it has sold more than 10 million Boxers outside India. Last year, Harley-Davidson shipped around 130,000 motorcycles in the entire world. So how did one of the most consequential motorcycles on Earth end up being the one nobody in the West was even watching? Pune, India, 1997. Bajaj Auto, a company best known back then for cheap scooters and three-wheeled auto rickshaws, rolls out a new commuter motorcycle called the Kawasaki Bajaj Boxer. The engine technology is borrowed from Kawasaki. The design philosophy is basically make it simple, make it cheap, make it last. It is a 100 cubic centimeter workhorse built for the Indian working class. And in India, it never becomes the success Bajaj hoped for. It is not fast enough for the young guys who want flash. It is not premium enough to turn heads. Bajaj keeps tinkering, even relaunching a bigger version a few years later, and that one underwhelms too. By 2015, Bajaj quietly pulls the Boxer from the Indian market entirely. On paper, that is the whole story, a forgettable bike that just faded out, except that is not what happened at all. Because while the Boxer was slowly dying at home, it was becoming a legend on a completely different continent. Here's the detail almost everyone misses. Sometime in the early 2000s, after the success of its Pulsar line gave the company real confidence, Bajaj made a decision that sounds obvious now, but was bold at the time. The leadership basically said, "Our playing field is not India. Our playing field is the world." They committed to building motorcycles for export, and not as some side hustle. Today, Bajaj exports somewhere between 40 and 45% of everything it makes, which is almost unheard of for a motorcycle company. Most manufacturers sell mostly at home and dabble abroad. Bajaj flipped that. And the bike they chose to lead the charge into some of the toughest, most demanding markets on Earth was the one that could not catch on in India, the Boxer. Now, why Africa? Why did this specific bike work there when it stalled out at home? The answer is almost poetic. The rough rural roads of India, the potholes, the dirt tracks, the dust, the heat, the long distances between mechanics look an awful lot like the conditions across huge parts of Africa. And almost by accident, the same qualities that made the Boxer suitable for rural India turned out to be perfect for much of Africa. Bajaj did not need to reinvent the bike for Lagos or Kampala. The thing was already exactly what those riders needed. They just had not met yet. So let's talk about what makes this bike special, because honestly, it's the least glamorous list of features you've ever heard, and that's the entire point. Start with durability, because this is the Boxer's whole legend. It's built simple and it's built tough, and many owners report extremely high mileages when the bikes are properly maintained. We're talking machines that get kept running for well over 100,000 kilometers, often with the engine rebuilt more than once along the way. And that last part matters way more than it sounds, so hold on to it. Then there's fuel economy. Depending on the model, a Boxer sips fuel at a rate that would make your car weep with envy. It's got high ground clearance for broken roads, suspension tuned to eat potholes instead of being destroyed by them, and a simple air-cooled engine with both an electric start and a kick start. Because when you are 100 miles from the nearest dealership in 40-degree heat, redundancy is your best friend. And here's the part that really matters. When a Boxer does break, and everything breaks eventually, fixing it is cheap and easy. The engine is simple enough that a roadside mechanic with a basic toolkit can sort most problems. The spare parts are widely available across the markets where Bajaj has built a real presence. So the bike is not just affordable to buy, It is affordable to own, year after year after year, even when that means rebuilding the engine instead of replacing the bike. That distinction is going to come back in a big way, because affordability is the whole game. A brand new entry-level Boxer lands for under $1,000 in most African markets. In Kenya, a Boxer 100 has gone for around 65,000 shillings. In Uganda, you are looking at a little over 2 million shillings for a new one. In Nigeria, a fresh Okada bike runs in the neighborhood of 800,000 naira. And because even those prices are a mountain for someone earning a few dollars a day, an entire ecosystem of financing grew up around these bikes. Companies offering daily payment plans, lease-to-own schemes where you pay a small amount every week, and eventually the bike is yours. That is how a guy with no savings and no credit history becomes a business owner with a vehicle that earns him money every single day. The bike pays for itself, and then it keeps paying. Now, Bajaj was not the first to spot that Africa wanted cheap motorcycles. Low-cost imports, many of them from China, got there first, and they got there hard. They undercut everyone on price, and for a while they owned the bottom of the market. But there was a catch, and it is the kind of catch that makes accountants cry. A lot of those early bikes were cheap to buy and frustrating to own. Many of them developed reputations for inconsistent quality and weak after-sales support, and the parts could be hard to find. Riders learned the hard way that the lowest sticker price is not the same thing as the lowest cost. The Indian bikes cost a bit more up front, but they lasted, the parts were easier to get, and there was an actual service network behind them. So riders did the math, and a lot of them switched. Bajaj, along with its Indian rival TVS, steadily won market share from many of those brands year after year. And once African riders trusted the Boxer, something bigger happened. This bike became the engine of an entire economy. In East Africa, they are called boda-bodas. The most widely accepted explanation is that the name came from the border. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, near the crossing between Kenya and Uganda, riders would ferry people and goods from one border post to the other, shouting "border, border," and the name stuck. In Nigeria, the same motorcycle taxis are called okada. Whatever you call them, they exploded into the most important informal transport system on the continent. Where public transit is thin and cars are out of reach, a motorcycle is how people get to work, how kids get to school, how goods move, how the whole thing functions. And the numbers behind this are genuinely staggering, with one big caveat I will get to. According to a 2025 industry study of Kenya's boda-boda sector, these riders generate an estimated 660 billion shillings a year. That study pegged it at roughly 4.4% of Kenya's entire economy, coming from riders on motorcycles. Now that is an estimate, and it sits at the higher end of the range, so take the exact figure with a pinch of salt. But the same study tied the sector to more than 2.5 million livelihoods, with a self-employed rider earning somewhere around 1,100 shillings on a good day. Cross the border into Uganda, and estimates suggest the capital city of Kampala alone runs on something like 350,000 boda-bodas weaving through traffic. Head west to Nigeria, and you are talking about millions upon millions of motorcycles operating as okada across the country. This is not a niche, this is infrastructure. And Bajaj motorcycles make up a significant portion of that traffic. So how do you sell that many bikes on a continent that far from your factories? You don't just ship them in, you build them there. Bajaj makes the Boxer in India, then exports it in kit form to be assembled locally by partners on the ground. In Kenya, Bajaj's authorized assembler ramped up to producing around 12,000 Boxers every single month, employing over 2,000 Kenyans and selling roughly 150,000 bikes a year through a network of hundreds of outlets and over 1,000 service workshops. In Nigeria, a local distributor runs an assembly plant in Lagos. This local assembly model keeps costs down, dodges import taxes, creates jobs in the country, doing the buying, and builds exactly the dealer and mechanic network that the cheap imports never bothered with. It's the whole package, and it's the reason the Boxer didn't just sell well, it dug in and became permanent. If you're enjoying this story so far, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I dig into the business stories and the machines that quietly run the world, and there's a lot more where this came from. All right, back to it. While all of this was happening across Africa back in the West, the motorcycle industry was busy chasing a completely different customer and basically acting like this entire market did not exist. Let's talk about who sat it out, starting with the most obvious one, Harley Davidson. Now, I love a Harley as much as anyone, but think about what a Harley actually is. It's a big, heavy, expensive cruiser. It's a lifestyle. It's chrome and rumble and weekend rides, and its customer base skews much older and much wealthier. That is about as far as you can get from what a 23-year-old in Kampala needs to feed his family. Harley's entire presence in Africa was basically a few enthusiast events and a handful of wealthy buyers. They never built a bike for the working rider because that was never who they were for. And that's the quiet truth sitting at the center of this whole story. Harley-Davidson is one of the most recognizable motorcycle brands in the world, but the transportation needs of billions of riders are being met by very different machines, designed for very different lives. We call brands like Harley global, when really, they serve the wealthier corners of the globe. Bajaj deliberately went after the markets that a lot of premium brands overlooked. Now, to be fair, it wasn't only Harley. Honda and Yamaha, the Japanese giants, are not asleep. They're genuinely present in Africa, they're respected, and worldwide they sell incredible numbers of reliable bikes. This isn't a story about Japanese failure, but in this specific corner of the market, the low-cost commercial rider segment that defines African demand, Bajaj and TVS simply out-hustled them. Cheaper bikes, deeper local assembly, better financing, parts on more corners. The Japanese were playing the global game well, the Indians were playing the African game obsessively, and obsession won. The result of all that obsession is a company most Westerners couldn't name that absolutely dominates. Bajaj Auto is the third largest motorcycle manufacturer on the planet and the world's biggest maker of those three-wheeled auto rickshaws. Its bikes reach more than 70 countries, and Africa is the crown jewel. At one point, the company's own executives said Africa accounted for roughly half of all Bajaj's exports, with Nigeria alone making up about half of that African business. Bajaj executives have also claimed, in years past, that the company held something like 90% of the market in Uganda and around 40% in Nigeria. Those were the company's own figures, and the market has shifted since, but they tell you just how total the dominance got. The Boxer became, in Bajaj's own words, the #1 motorcycle in Africa, not a player, the player. Now, this would be a perfect place to end the story. Plucky bike conquers a continent, everybody wins, roll credits. But that would leave out the parts that actually matter, and a story this big has a shadow. Because the same motorcycle that lifts a young man out of unemployment can also get him killed. As the boda-boda boom exploded, so did the accidents. In Uganda, the number of fatal motorcycle crashes more than doubled in just a handful of years, climbing from around 600 deaths in 2014 to over 1,400 by 2021. Government transport officials have openly admitted they are struggling to get a handle on it. Doctors in some hospitals have grimly referred to their trauma wards as boda-boda wards, and the bikes became such a source of traffic chaos and crime in some places that governments started banning them. Nigeria's largest city, Lagos, slammed down a sweeping okada ban, at one point threatening violators with prison time. So you have a vehicle that is, at the same time, the engine of opportunity for millions and a genuine public safety crisis. Both things are true. That tension is the real story of the boda-boda, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. And then there's the business shadow, the reminder that even an empire built on the perfect product can wobble when the ground shifts underneath it. That ground was money. In 2024, Nigeria's currency went into freefall. The naira collapsed, inflation went vertical, and dollars became scarce. For ordinary riders, a new motorcycle suddenly cost a fortune in local terms, and demand fell off a cliff. Bajaj's own executives laid it out plainly. Their benchmark sales in Nigeria of around 50,000 motorcycles a month crashed to under 5,000. That's not a dip. That's a roughly 90% collapse in the company's single biggest African market, almost overnight, and overall African exports dropped sharply that year. The Boxer didn't get worse. The economy did, and it showed that even total market dominance can't shield you from a currency crisis you don't control. So where does this leave the little bike that conquered a continent, right at the edge of its next big fight? Because the same logic that let Bajaj leapfrog the early imports, building the right machine for the real conditions on the ground, is now being pointed back at Bajaj. A wave of electric motorcycle startups, companies like Rome, Spiro, and Ampersand, are betting that African riders sick of rising fuel prices will switch to electric bikes with swappable batteries. They are small today. But so was Bajaj once. These newcomers are beginning to challenge the same market Bajaj spent decades building. And the throne the Boxer took from the cheap gas bikes of the 2000s is exactly the kind of throne that gets taken again. Here's what gets me about this whole thing, though. We talk about globalization like it's this giant, obvious force that everybody sees coming. But one of the biggest motorcycle stories of the last 20 years did not happen in the markets the financial press obsesses over. It happened on the back roads of Uganda and the gridlock streets of Lagos, with a cheap Indian bike that failed at home, sold to riders the famous brands did not think were worth designing for. The Boxer's real lesson is not about motorcycles at all. It is that the next billion customers are usually the ones nobody powerful is paying attention to, riding right past while everyone looks the other way. So next time someone tells you about the world's great motorcycle brands, ask them a simple question. Not which bike is the fastest, or the loudest, or the most expensive. Ask them which one actually moves the most people. The answer might just be a bike they've never heard of, pulling away from a curb in Nairobi, with a passenger on the back and enough life left in it to keep earning for years. If you learned something today, hit subscribe, drop a comment with the most surprising number from this video, and I will see you in the next one.